Well, it's time again for another review of classic Doctor Who. And still going with the second Doctor, Patrick Troughton. And another Cybermen episode. And the Cybermen were a big deal for the second Doctor. They came onto the scene at the end of the first Doctor's time. And then they evolved during the Patrick Troughton years. But this one but the second one would have been the Moon Base episode, which I reviewed before, and then now Tomb of the Cybermen, which is largely agreed to be a great classic of Doctor Who. And well, I'm not really in that crowd. I enjoy the show for its good moments here and there, and it introduces a lot of cool things about the Cybermen. It also goes on to this lore about them being these sort of legendary monsters, and that it's always going further and further into the future. And people have almost forgotten about them, or again, they're just like these legends, or like the boogeyman of the past, or something like that. And then, no, it was all true. And the same was true of Moonbase. Now, oh boy, I'm blanking on. Someone commented, and I appreciate it very much, that Moonbase was basically a redo of the 10th planet, and that's very true. There's a lot of truth to that, in that it's the base in trouble. So it was a base on the ground. The next one was a base on the moon. And you're under assault from the Cybermen. Here, the base is the Cybermen's tomb. So the people are invading their home. Hey, that's what you get. You broke in. You tried to steal stuff. The Cybermen have every right to wipe you out. So here we have the planet Telos. And it was some grave robbers, archaeologists, and treasure hunters, what have you, looking. They know it's the Cybermen's tomb, as it were. They figure it's old, derelict stuff. The Cybermen are long gone, and there could be all kinds of fascinating stuff. The archaeologist, of course, just wants to find out what it all was and record it, and have relics to put on display and that sort of thing. Whereas the financiers are looking for, well, at first you think they're looking for wealth and whatnot to get out of this material, but in the end they want to use the power of the Cybermen to dominate the world. And to move it into a new era of logic and whatnot. Yeah, the plot's kind of weak on their part, and the villains, the human villains, boy, they're really stupid. I mean, and this one guy is just, he loses all. I mean, it's just, I don't know, you have to conclude he had some sort of breakdown. Because after several times of proving that it's not going to work, he's not going to be able to get the Cybermen to obey him, he keeps trying to do it until finally they just kill the guy. So, and that's the way it goes there. So things like that I thought was a little too weak. Whereas Moonbase was just, granted, a redo of 10th Planet, but it was very step by step. We're under attack. We got to figure out how to survive and defend ourselves, and they win, and they figure out how to outsmart the Cybermen, and there you go. Whereas here, the Doctor's okay, and you got and there's some interesting things. Now, it's not that it's, oh, good God, don't watch this. No, in fact, it's really good because it's complete. You don't have an animated segment. You don't have the what do you call them? The telesnaps, the still shots they would use, some of them with descriptions and whatnot and audio. It's a complete adventure here for the 4 parts of Tomb of Cybermen, and there's some interesting little tidbits here where people will cling to it now for over the years of developing the overall story and narrative of the Doctor himself, and that he does mention he did have a family. And does that mean Susan was really his granddaughter and whatnot? We have to just assume she was, because there's nothing to say she wasn't. And he does refer to a family, but they're gone, apparently. And because Victoria is still, and this Victoria was introduced in the previous adventure, and now here she is, a part of the crew. Ben and Polly have gone their merry way, and it's Jamie and Victoria and the Doctor now. And her father, of course, didn't survive the Daleks in the previous episode. Oh, Yes, that's another thing. Well, let me clear up this. So the discussion of family there, and it's significant for the Doctor and whatnot about missing someone, and he's trying to help Victoria on how you deal with that and you move forward with your life and all that. But yes, the Daleks were supposed to, I believe that was supposed to be the end of them. They were seriously considering not doing them anymore, and that the Cybermen would take their place. Well, I really don't think that was ever a possibility. I like the Cybermen. In some ways, I like them better. There are similarities. You have two races of people who gave up their old original selves to become these machine people. You know, the Daleks did it worse. They mutated themselves into this ball of snot shoved into these giant salt and pepper shakers. Whereas the Cybermen said, yeah, you know, we're just going to replace some parts here and there and some longer lasting machine parts and whatnot. So the similarities were there and whatnot, and also a belief of achieving perfection. Whereas the Daleks don't really care to transform and assimilate other races. They're very racist. Whereas the Cybermen, they'll let you in, but you gotta be one of them. So you're going to have to get assimilated. It's a little more than just, oh, you gotta learn the language and know a little bit about the civics and history of the country. Nah, we gotta cut most of your body off. And so that's the deal, and that's what they're always doing. And of course later completely ripped off top to bottom by Star Trek's The Borg, but that's another story. But anyway, that's the Cybermen, and they're still pretty much in appearance as they appeared on Moonbase, so it hasn't changed much. Besides, it takes up from that, because they do speak to it that after that mission failed, they went into their hibernation and waited. The grave robbers wake them up. The Doctor just happens to show up with his friends, and they get involved in it. They suspect they're rival grave robbers or what have you. And they get in there, and of course, they wake it all up. And another thing about the Cybermen is the Cybermats introduced here, which will show up frequently in later adventures. And so that's all well and good. Now, before I questioned the idea of the Polly's position in Moonbase, as they said she was being diminished and wasn't that important, and she was just there to make coffee for everybody, when in actuality she's the one who actually came up with a means by which they could fight back against the Cybermen. And it's never mentioned in all these discussions. I want to make a political statement out of a show with a clip, and I kind of wonder if these people even watch the whole thing if they keep doing that. Here, on the other hand, well, we've got the subject of Toberman. It sounds like it's Robot Man written backwards, but they actually put an E in there, so it's not quite. But yeah, the only black character in the cast here, and he's basically just there to be the muscle, and he's actually referred to as the servant of the villainous woman there. And boy, well, it does conjure up some bad sentiments here. And then some people suggest that when he's taken over by the Cybermen, even the Cybermen treat him that way, and the Doctor even says they just want you to be a slave, and all that. But the initial way he's treated by the others, and that he's depicted as this kind of stupid, he's just this big lumbering guy, and that sort of thing. Yeah, you could say that that's offensive, and there's some racial undertones. Whether they deliberately thought this or they were subconscious to it or what have you, but it seems to be there to some extent. That's far more there than I would say any misogyny on the part of Polly in the previous story. But so poor Toberman, so he's part of the villains there. He's going to help them steal the stuff they want and all that, and try to use the Cybermen in a means of taking over the world and all that sort of thing, and ends up being captured by the Cybermen and only partially transformed into a Cyberman, but enough to where for a brief while they do have control of him. But boy, that backfires on the Cybermen, as they picked the strongest man and gave him a cyber arm, and well, he used it to trash them. He tosses the cyber leader, or the controller they're calling him at this point. And because every time this happens, of course, it's immediately a mannequin in a suit. But the way he mopped the room up with you, buddy. And so, they're still using the sound effect for the voice, and when the Cybermen are upset, I can't help but laugh. But anyway, all in all, there's plenty there for fun and adventure, and it's all, once again, very simple. A few location shots for outdoors, and then the rest of it is on the set, and you're there, and there's only a couple of rooms, and it doesn't take away from any of that, but it's just the characters and their motivations I thought were pretty weak, especially the villains, and not the Cybermen. The Cybermen are the Cybermen, I know it's seen as a classic, and it's complete. We didn't lose it like with Moonbase. We lost an episode and all that sort of thing, and of course, yes, Moonbase, as previously stated, was basically the same thing as 10th Planet, but still, I just find it better than this one. But that's, neither here nor there. Really, you get a full Troughton adventure. Troughton does his best as the Doctor. And I'd say, like, another weakness I would have said is a weakness, but it's so commonplace in Doctor Who where he just shows up. And I always wondered if someone would do a story where it's revealed that he was secretly being manipulated by some cabal within Gallifrey or something like that, and that the TARDIS was seeking out places where the Doctor was needed. Because, he's just like, hey, let's go check this place out and see what's what. And it just so happens it's, the Cybermen, or, it's the Daleks, or whatever, And, so, I always thought that would have been an interesting, and maybe someone did it and I missed it, or it was in a novel or a comic book or something like that, or Big Finish did a story like that. Who knows? But other than that, Tomb of the Cybermen, it just by the nature of its position and what it deserves its place, is one of the great classic Doctor Who episodes. Just not one of my particular favorites, but nevertheless, there you go. And of course, very grateful it survives, and we have a full and complete Patrick Troughton adventure. And you see more evidence of why Patrick Troughton is pretty much the Doctor fully realized as it goes forward, and why so many successive actors always mention they look to Troughton as guidance about how they want to do their Doctor. And quite a few of them have said that. Certainly Peter Davison did, and Matt Smith. Well, Matt Smith is really studying hard on Troughton a lot with his Doctor. So significant all around for the lore of Doctor Who. Thank you very much for watching and listening. Say, why not like and subscribe, and check out that link description below. That'll take you to my mini stores that have plenty of goodies for you. Yes, that's right, you.